Modern women were sold empowerment, while in truth what they get is enslavement. They were promised liberation, yet received commodification instead. Their soul auctioned to the highest bidder. Civilizations can only be built if the women are protected and preserved. From the womb, they carry the continuity of both life and meaning. They're not ornaments of society. They are in fact the spiritual backbone of it. In The Creation of Patriarchy, Gerda Lerner shows that early societies did not marginalize women. They revered them as the vessels through which culture, kinship, and morality were passed. They were not marginalized, but central to civilization's reproduction of values. The Quran doesn't frame women as commodities. It frames them as amana, entrusted, protected, and elevated. Jonathan Brown confirmed in misquoting Muhammad that in Islamic law, a woman is not owned. Her body is not transactional, her identity not dissolved in marriage, and her testimony not dismissed. This is not liberalism, but divine design. Now compare this to modern slogans. No uterus, no opinion, and my body, my choice. Women are reduced from the first moral guide for the children to narcissists who privatize their selfishness. And how do the men in turn naturally react? With my money, my choice, of course. It was only logical. When you stripped men of their right to vote over their own progeny, they stripped you of access to their livelihood. Fair, perhaps, but fatal. It severed consequence from community, and communities die when the women become isolated. Yet modernity called it progress. They repackaged exploitation as freedom, and profit from the very thing they claim to elevate. For most of human history, women weren't just protected, they were sacred carriers of identity itself. From tribal memory to religious tradition, the future of any community was entrusted to the mothers, not the scribes. To deform the woman was to rupture the lineage. Yet, that is exactly what has happened. The sacred formula has now been inverted. Modernity is now attacking the very womb of civilization rather than safeguarding it. First with slogans, then with laws, then with total market integration. What began as empowerment now functions as cultural sterilization. And the waves of feminism became the delivery system. First-wave feminism began with real grievances: education, voting rights, and inheritance. But those grievances were born under Christian suppression, not Islamic neglect. At the same time period, Islamic women were already thriving and played important roles in their society. Yet, oddly enough, the ones being framed as backward are the Muslims. In The Forgotten Queens of Islam, Fatima Mernissi confirmed that the Muslim world was the first to give women rights to property, inheritance, education, and even political leadership, centuries before the West. The problem is not Islam, but with what has been done to it. What began as a struggle for rights in the first wave shifted radically in the second wave. Simone de Beauvoir and Betty Friedan recast the home as a prison and motherhood as oppression, leaving no room for women to choose their place. So the system listened and mobilized them as labor. Capitalism saw them as an untapped workforce, and thus the home became worthless overnight. Tasha K. Ridin stated in Feminism's second wave hangover that instead of being liberated to do what they want, women now are expected to do everything, want it or not. Ironically, feminism was originally all about choices. Today, however, feminists paint this decision as mandatory and children as optional. Then the third wave came crashing down, completing the descent. Hypersexuality is being sold as agency. They popularized slut walks, hookup culture, and worst of all, OnlyFans. Women were taught that power lay not in virtue but in visibility. The more they undress, the more they control. The result? An entire generation conditioned to believe that attention equals value and intimacy disposable commodity. Abike Sertas, in Sexism and the Commodification of Women in Media, a Critical Analysis, explained how the commodification of female sexuality in modern media reduces women to objects of consumption, eroding the very empowerment feminism seeks to achieve. The system smiles, but the consequences are profound. Men gain access to commodified women, while corporations harvest the very essence of femininity, leaving only hollow shells in their wake. Female sexuality is no longer private or protected. It is now monetized, weaponized, and mass-distributed under corporate branding. The soul is reduced to entertainment, and the body becomes inventory. All while women are told that it's empowerment. The outcome is obvious. Men retreated from marriage and fatherhood. Women rose in singleness, infertility, and exhaustion. As depression soared, antidepressants became a substitute for real companionship, and therapy supplanted spirituality. That girl culture becomes the goal, and wellness influencers now set the standard. Narcissism is disguised as healing. Nora Vincent, a radical feminist who believed men live in easy mode, decided to undergo elaborate disguise and lived as a man. She planned for a 24-month period, but evidently 18 was enough to break her. It was a project aimed to expose men, but at the end of it, she couldn't bear the immense burden men carry. Yet despite this, feminists are still adamant that men are privileged. In Self-Made Man, One Woman's Journey into Manhood and Back Again, Nora Vincent stated that men are suffering. They have different problems than women have, but they don't have it better. They need our sympathy. They need our love, and they need each other more than anything else. They need to be together. And as she suggested, men fled to the manosphere, or to countries where femininity still breathes, which seems to be running out by the minute. Trust destroyed, love collapsed, and even friendship is vanishing. Because feminism didn't teach women to be strong, it only taught them to fight men instead of being honored by them. And in the end, the system didn't just fail women, but devoured them whole. This rift is irreversible, not only in beliefs, but in biology itself. As the sexes grow further apart, civilization teeters on the edge of collapse. Women are told they need nothing from men, and men are learning to believe them. The natural complementarity between the sexes has degraded into cold opposition. Distrust breeds detachment, and detachment breeds degeneration. Eleanor Wilkinson, in Loneliness is a Feminist Issue, remarked how the overarching narrative around the current epidemic of loneliness is one where community has been replaced by rampant individualism, resulting in emptiness, disaffection, and loneliness. Thus, men are forced into a corner. Either surrender their leadership or stand their ground. There is no third option, and most are choosing the latter. Not because they hate women, but because they know the future depends on it. Civilization cannot be rebuilt on fragile egos and broken trust. It needs roles, rootedness, and responsibility, not rivalries. Modern success is still male-coded. It brings the successful men career, money, and dominance. So women were told to suppress their softness, crush their compassion, and be assertive. Be dominant. Be like men. But they were not told that the successful ones are a mere fraction of the whole. The majority of men will always live in struggle. As the famous Jordan Peterson argues in 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, the idea that the oppressive Western patriarchy is a male-dominated hierarchy is an appalling misrepresentation of history. Most men have not been in power. Instead, they've been exploited, sent to war, and worked in dangerous conditions. Feminists don't want equality in coal mines or on fishing trawlers. They only want it in boardrooms. Feminine traits were rebranded as liabilities. Nurturing, tenderness, and spiritual depth are portrayed as weaknesses. What's left is a generation of women with frayed identities, broken homes, and empty hearts. Sexual liberation doesn't empower women. It only makes them less mysterious, less valuable, and therefore less powerful. In The Bonds of Love, Jessica Benjamin noted that feminism's commitment to equality often involves the denial or negation of women's unique capacities. In seeking equality with men, women risk losing the qualities that have traditionally defined them, such as empathy and emotional intelligence. Today, the female body is no longer sacred. It's now just a project, a product, an object to optimize. Feminism claimed they wanted gender equality, but what they truly demanded was the sameness with men. And that sameness required one thing: the sacrifice of everything that makes women special. When Nora Vincent was conducting her social experiment meant to expose men, she wasn't just wearing male clothes. She was living among them. She was competing alongside them. This was the first time she felt the full weight of manhood. She has always been dating women too, but this was also the first time she did so as a man. She experienced the social rejection, the emotional restraint, and the invisibility men have to live with. And it shattered her, not only mentally, but spiritually. She voluntarily checked into a mental institution not long after, and tragically took her own life in 2022. This is why the gender war can never produce a winner. When men lose, women suffer. And when women lose, the future itself dies. There's no victory in sameness, only extinction. A society that mocks what makes women feminine is a society that is quietly preparing its own funeral. The renowned Camille Paglia described in Sexual Personae that the battle for equality, when it collapses into a struggle for sameness, ignores the profound differences between men and women. True gender equality must affirm the unique roles and characteristics of both sexes. When either sex is forced to diminish its essence, society pays the price in lost potential and harmony. The tragedy is not just ideological, but existential. Women are not only severing their bonds with men, they're severing their own ties to joy, meaning, and continuity. Career success may buy them a car and an apartment, but it cannot give them legacy. It cannot replace family. And when that realization comes, it tends to come far too late. Modern women are burnt out, disoriented, and unfulfilled. This is the engineered outcome of a system that redefined their value according to industrial productivity metrics. Nurturing is labelled as weakness. Modesty is framed as oppression. And fertility is seen as a threat to career. All wrapped up nicely in a luxurious package called progress. The feminine wasn't just ignored. It was hijacked by capitalism, which turned women into workers and a thriving market. It was hijacked by secularism, which severed them from the divine. And it was hijacked by feminism, which promised power but delivered only exhaustion and irrelevance. And at every stage, womanhood was redesigned to serve agendas that had no place for their soul. Nina Power, in One-Dimensional Woman, described how the corporatization of feminism has resulted in women being sold back their own oppression as empowerment. The ideal feminist woman is now one who is maximally productive, sexually available, and spiritually detached. In Japan, the collapse is clinical. A 2024 survey by Japan's Institute of Population and Social Security shows over 50% of men and women in their 20s have zero romantic experience, and 1/3 have no interest in ever marrying. The birth rate has plummeted to 1.2 children per woman, far below the 2.1 replacement level. The total population shrinks by 800,000 people per year. A culture built on honor and legacy now exports anime fantasies to cope with the vacuum left by absent families. In South Korea, feminism fused with hyper-capitalism has triggered full-scale demographic revolt. A 2024 report by Statistics Korea reveals the fertility rate has collapsed to 0.75, the lowest in the world. 1 in 5 women now says they plan to have no children at all. The anti-marriage 4B movement rejects dating, marriage, and childbirth. It even rejects relationships with men. The government has spent over $200 billion in the past 15 years to reverse the trend, with limited success. Productivity rose, but the soul disappeared. In Europe, the aging womb of liberalism, the numbers are irreversible. In Italy, the birth rate sits at 1.2 now. It's 1.16 in Spain, and it's just 1.35 in Germany, despite state support. Meanwhile, over 25% of European women born in the 1970s are reaching the end of fertility without ever having children. Gender ideology has replaced maternal legacy. Marriage has been unlinked from meaning, and feminism, once marketed as freedom, has left behind a generation unsure of what a woman even is. This isn't liberation, but the systematic dismantling of femininity. A cold engineering of women's worth to serve a corrupt system. And unless the original blueprint is restored, where the soul was central and womanhood sacred, then the system will keep mass-producing hollow identities. Burnt-out women told to heal by fragmenting themselves further. Round and round it spins, until the feminine and the civilization it holds together finally breaks. If you want power, take a close look at Aisha. She was a scholar, a jurist, and a battle leader. Her intellect and strength were wrapped in piety. In many ways, she was superior to her male societal counterparts. Yet she never acted in any similar ways with the present-day feminists. She remained rooted in her womanhood. And every Muslim across time loves her for that, calling her the mother of all Muslims. If you want respect, take a close look at Fatima, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad. She's honored for her modesty, devotion, and soul. Not because of her lineage, but her personality. Her femininity. Just like Aisha, she remained rooted in her womanhood. And for that, she's called the leader of the women of paradise. And if you want impact, take a close look at Fatima al-Fihri. She was the founder of Al-Qarawiyyin, the first university in the world. Established in 859 CE, significantly older than even the University of Bologna. And it wasn't established in Paris or in New York, but in Fez, Morocco, under Islamic civilization. Islam never needed feminism to honor women, because it already did so since its establishment. It ordered men to change their ways and treat women with dignity. And this is something that can only be done if there isn't any form of commodification in the society. Today, those examples are erased. They're now replaced with sexual influences, marketable rebellion, and profitable discontent. Birth rates have collapsed, marriage is mocked, and motherhood is ridiculed. Even secular scholars themselves admit the secular societies are in decline. Some are even terminally. Japan, Korea, and Europe are perfect present-time examples of how hyper-individualism leads to civilizational suicide. No society can last when it mocks mothers, shames purity, and forgets the sacred worth of femininity. Islam holds the last pure blueprint, designed to protect women. Because even now, the feminine soul is still waiting to be saved.